Hello, good evening. Welcome to my presentation on the intertwining, interlocking, and melding relationships of religion and politics, or as I so beautifully worded it right there, politics and religion in ancient Israel. My name is Josiah Mendez, and hopefully we're going to take about like seven or so minutes to go through this whole presentation. So let's get started. Welcome to my introduction slide. As you can see here, which should be here, maybe I'm pointing the wrong place, probably. Here you see here we go, a map of the kingdom of Israel during the time of King Solomon and King David. King David being the father of King Solomon, if you didn't know that. This project was just me researching the relationship that ancient Israel had between its religion and politics. Kind of taking my time to look at the ways that religion in particular kind of gave a foundation and groundwork for the politics of ancient Israel. It kind of gave it more of a ethical and moral groundwork to what is otherwise, if you read through the biblical narrative, a very debaucherous and just not so great nation. I mean, we can all call a spade a spade. Ancient Israel was not always great. And so the religion of Judaism, or as scholars will say, Yahwehism or whatever it might be, really did help in giving just good kind of ethical and moral boundaries and principles that really helped to guide the nation, and as well as and not only just the moral on the moral level, but helping to establish more of a national identity and rituals and practices or feasts that they held, as well as kind of giving a framework for what their governance should look like. So yeah, that's my introduction for this presentation. My first point, like I was saying, is about how ancient Israel's politics and religion, uh, mainly the religion, really helped in giving a moral and political foundation for the kingdom of ancient Israel. So just some background. Um, Ancient Israel gets its law system through the Mosaic laws, which are given to Moses on Mount Sinai. This is following their exodus from the land of Egypt, and the crazy story where Moses puts a staff in the Red Sea and it splits and they all walk through, and then the Pharaoh and all the other people in the chariots go and it's I'm sure that was a very helpful illustration for you. It was for me. So yeah, but this was a pretty foundational and important moment for the people of Israel, um, just because this is when they get their law. The Mosaic Law teaches them basically how to be different from the other nations, which, as you may see when you read through the biblical narrative once again, the other nations aren't always the best. Typically, you can find them sacrificing their children to idols, and doing all sorts of things like that, marrying a bunch of different women, or you know, doing a bunch of again debaucherous and immoral things. And Israel, time and time again, will show itself to kind of try following the other nations. And so, even here in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, we see God presenting and giving to the people of Israel a law, which we see in the Mosaic Law. Um, these laws concern justice, property, and leadership, with Deuteronomy 17 in particular, verses 14 and following, really kind of going in depth about how, again, Israel wants to be like the nations. They'll want a king, even though God is their king, and how, again, God will, you know, govern forth for them, providing them a king that they should follow. We also see how Israel's legal system reflects a merging of the sacred and the civil order, um, because God quite literally says to them in verse 15 of chapter 17 of Deuteronomy, you are to appoint over you the king the Lord your God chooses. So, I mean, clearly we see a melding of sacred and divine with just the secular or political realm. Next is worship and national identity. Um, through the Mosaic Law, and just the way that religion and the politics are set up, um, there's so many different feast days. You have Passover, which is every Saturday, day of rest. You have, it's not on here, but the year of Jubilee, which is a year to uh, let free and give freedom to enslaved peoples. Um, and so, I mean, just the way that the whole society is built, it is built around a system of continual worship, um, and God gives them a sort of even flow, um, just in order. Um, and I think time and time again, you see these feasts and all of these different things are, times of fellowship for Israel to come together. And these doing that with one another brings people joy. It brings them closer together. Um, so yeah, and we even see the centralization of worship in Jerusalem in Deuteronomy 12. Just again bringing together the people of Israel. Jerusalem is a pretty important city. You can see it's right here, meshed right in between Judah and Israel. Judah being the largest of the 12 tribes, and Israel kind of being a hodgepodge of, the other tribes. And so, I mean, Jerusalem's a pretty key area of allowing for both the north and south ends of Israel to come together to worship God together. So, yeah. And then finally, we just have leadership and divine authority. Once again, as I stated earlier, uh, God states himself that he will show Israel who it is that he wants for them to choose as their king. Um, and you have people all throughout Scripture, um, whether or in particular with the prophets. You have kings and prophets, and you have the priests, the Levitical priesthood, and all three of them, ideally, it doesn't always happen, obviously, but ideally, the three of them working together for the betterment of the nation and for the glory of God. You see, um, when King David does his really bad, um, the guy murders someone so that he can commit adultery. Just happens, But even in that, you see Samuel come along and kind of, or I'm sorry, not Samuel. Happens in Samuel, but you see Nathan come along and kind of rebuke David, and so even in that, you have a checks and balances between kind of once again the divine and the secular parts um, of the nation, and really, I mean, it's just they're melded together. So, um, and again, really, this is the story of Israel and its people when the secular and the divine are not seeing eye to eye. That's when things, start proving to be troublesome for Israel. You see that with King David once again, like I had mentioned, in his sin with Bathsheba. You kind of have like a golden age with Israel, and then it kind of takes its first nosedive once David commits this sin, and it just that that action sets a groundwork for the rest of Israel, and you'll see just the gradual decline of and moral decay of a nation. Um, And so, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to double click. And so, yeah, in conclusion, uh, the politics and religion of ancient Israel had a lot of overlap. And it wasn't really possible to separate the two of them because, as I had mentioned earlier, um, when you separated the two, that just spelled disaster and trouble for the entire nation. Um, uh, and it's not something that was surprising to God. Even in earlier on in Deuteronomy 17, where he, you know, says that he will provide kings for them, that's only after he acknowledges the fact that, yeah, you guys are going to disobey and want to be like the other nations around and sin against me. So, I mean, he already knows. And so, ultimately, sadly, because of the moral decay of a nation and the desire that they had to break away from this kind of intertwining of religion and politics, um, and just kind of like tear it apart. Second Kings, chapter 17, verses 7 through 8, kind of just give a perfect illustration of um, just the end of a nation. So I'll just read that, and yeah, I'll just close with that. This disaster happened because the people of Israel sinned against the Lord, their God, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and because they worshipped other gods. They lived according to the customs of the nations that the Lord had dispossessed before the Israelites, and according to what the kings of Israel did. So again, we see when a nation sins against God, there is judgment and there is despair surely to come. But again, earlier on in the nation, we saw what happens when, and countless times, there are a handful, I should say, of good kings in Judah. Judah, sorry, Israel, you guys kind of fall off after Solomon, which is unfortunate. Um, but there are a handful of good kings throughout. And we see time and time again when religion and politics are, successfully brought together so that they can benefit one another and build off of each other. Um, I'm sorry. Um, it's for the betterment of the nation. So thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I appreciate it. This was a lot longer than 7 minutes. So, hey, that's pretty cool. Hope I get a good grade on this.